Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION The World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Charna.
And I'm Josna Kaman. On the show today, U.S. President Donald Trump has secured Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's backing for a wide-ranging Gaza peace plan, as the two leaders warned that Israel would finish the job against Hamas if the Palestinian militant group rejects the deal. Well, it remains to be seen how Hamas responds to the plan. We will be discussing that on the show today.
Also on World DNA, India is celebrating Durga Puja. We bring you a special report showcasing how people, both young and old, are celebrating this vibrant festival with devotion, joy and tradition. This and a lot more lined up for you right here on World DNA. Let's start with the headlines.
Big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu say they have agreed on a new peace plan for Gaza. The plan proposes an immediate end to military operations, with Hamas releasing all hostages within 72 hours in exchange for hundreds of detained Gazans.
This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done. We prefer the easy way, but it has to be done.
That was the Israeli Prime Minister, who welcomes President Trump's peace plan, says if Hamas rejects the peace plan or does not follow through, Israel will finish the job with full US backing.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu apologizes to his Qatari counterpart for the Israeli strike in Qatar. During a call made from the White House, Netanyahu expressed deep regret that the strike against Hamas targets unintentionally killed a Qatari serviceman.
I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing. I hope they change their mind, but we're going to...
US Vice President J.D. Vance says that the federal government was headed to a shutdown after top Republican and Democratic congressional leaders left a White House meeting with President Trump without a budget deal.
Russia warns of steep escalation risk if U.S. sends Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. The day after U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said that Washington was considering a Ukrainian request to obtain the cruise missiles.
Internet watchdog says Afghanistan is currently experiencing a total connectivity blackout after Taliban government shuts down telecommunications. This comes weeks after they began severing fiber optic internet connections to prevent what they call immorality.
Tamil Nadu police arrest District Secretary of TVK party in connection with the stampede in Karur. At least 41 people died in the stampede that happened at a party president and actor politician Vijay's public rally.
YouTube has agreed to pay Donald Trump $22 million to settle a 2021 lawsuit which Trump had filed after the company suspended his account following January 6th US Capitol riot.
Trump has announced new tariffs, 10% on softwood lumber and 25% on imported cabinets aimed at protecting U.S. manufacturing. But critics warn the move could drive up construction costs and strain trade ties, especially with Canada and China.
Nepal stunned two-time world champions West Indies by a record 90 runs to win their T20I series 2-0 with a match to spare.
Cricketer Tilak Verma, who is unbeaten 69 in the Asia Cup final, led India to victory over Pakistan, receives a grand welcome on returning home to Hyderabad. Well, after days of speculation, the White House unveiled a 20-point plan to end the nearly two-year war in Gaza.
And this was to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas and lay out a vision for Gaza's future. US President Donald Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, they announced a detailed peace plan for Gaza, calling on Hamas to accept these terms. The deal calls for an immediate ceasefire, Hamas disarmament and a gradual Israeli withdrawal. It introduces a new international body to govern Gaza temporarily, barring Hamas from any political role. And the framework also allows for future Palestinian statehood. Trump described the proposal as a historic day for peace, while Netanyahu backed the plan, saying it meets Israel's war goals.
I also want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for agreeing to the plan and for trusting that if we work together, we can bring an end to the death and destruction that we've seen for so many years, decades, even centuries, and begin a new chapter of security, peace, and prosperity for the entire region.
I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims. It will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel.
Now, according to this proposal, Hamas is expected to release all hostages, living and deceased, within 72 hours of acceptance. In return, Israel would release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, including women and children, detained after October 7, 2023.
Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and disarmament will receive amnesty or safe passage out of Gaza, and the plan aims to demilitarize Gaza, making it free of terror threats and rebuild it for the benefit of its people.
Now, full humanitarian aid will flow into Gaza, with the Rafah crossing reopened under established mechanism. Governance will be temporarily handled by a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee overseen by an international body called the Board of Peace, chaired by Donald Trump and including figures like Tony Blair.
Now, according to this proposal, a development plan inspired by successful West Asian cities will revitalize Gaza's economy. Gazans will have freedom of movement with no forced displacement. Hamas and other factions will be excluded from governance, and all military and terror infrastructure will be dismantled under international supervision.
Hamas is yet to give its judgment on the proposal that Trump unveiled, leaving uncertainty swirling around the fate of the 20-point plan to end the war. The two leaders warned that Israel would finish the job against Hamas if it rejects the deal.
Trump said that Israel would have his full backing to do so if Hamas did not accept the deal.
But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way. But it will be done.
Israel would have my full backing to finish the job of destroying the threat of Hamas. But I hope that we're going to have a deal for peace. And if Hamas rejects the deal, which is always possible, they're the only one left.
According to the 20-point plan, an international stabilization force will deploy to train Palestinian police and secure borders, working with Israel and Egypt. Israel will progressively withdraw from Gaza based on agreed security milestones without annexing or occupying the territory. If Hamas rejects the plan, aid and stabilization efforts will continue in areas cleared of terror. And well, to discuss more on this, we are now being joined by Giorgio Cafiero from Washington, D.C. He is the CEO at the Gulf State Analytics and professor at the Georgetown University. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, of course, let's get into it. Now, this is a new 20-point plan that Trump has now shown the world. How do you assess it, and is this a new breakthrough now?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on as your guest. I think this certainly is a big deal, but what we also need to understand is that there are many legitimate concerns that analysts are raising about this plan and how realistic of a pathway it is offering the parties toward a truly lasting and genuine peace. I think a major concern has to be the fact that there are really no guarantees that Israel is not going to resume its warfare. There is no detail about how this is going to move toward Palestinian statehood. The question of the West Bank is obviously not even addressed here. It's clearly a plan for the Palestinians in Gaza being imposed by outside powers, with Tony Blair, out of all people, sort of serving as a viceroy. However, I will say the fact that there are a number of important and influential countries in the Arab Islamic world, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Turkey, Qatar, UAE, so on and so forth, is positive from the standpoint of the plan. But more important than having buy-in from regional states will be buy-in from the Palestinians. Now, for all of the issues with this plan, we should also consider that the situation in Gaza is extremely dire, and time is not exactly on Hamas's side. There's a huge power imbalance between Hamas in Gaza and Israel, with the full support of the United States. Within that context, I certainly do think it's possible that Hamas will conclude that this is the best option it's going to have. As flawed of an option as it is, it's possible that Hamas will determine that this is the best course of action that would be available to the people of Gaza right now.
I hear you, Mr. Cafiero. I just want to take from the exact wordings this big question always, and it still remains: who will take care of Gaza once this war is over? If Hamas is gone, who looks at Gaza? So the answer, at least in these 20 points, comes from this: that the governance will be temporarily handled by a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee overseen by an international body called the Board of Peace. Now, that's a lot of words, but then comes the pivotal or operational word that it's going to be chaired by Donald Trump, and that includes Tony Blair as well, which you just mentioned. From whatever we've seen of how Donald Trump handles his affairs, when Donald Trump is at the head of the chair, he is definitely calling the shots. Is this really what, initially Donald Trump had suggested for Gaza, that he makes it his own personal Riviera? Is it kind of going in that same direction?
Well, this does seem to be a little bit of a divergence from the rhetoric we heard from Trump earlier this year about the U.S. simply taking Gaza. This seems to place more emphasis on international actors playing more of a hands-on role, rather than making Gaza simply a U.S. possession, basically. I have to assume that there was probably some influence that entered the picture when Trump was meeting with the leaders of important regional countries. However, I think there's also something else here that needs to be mentioned. When we look at, for example, how the November 2024 ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah has played out, and also when we look at the fact that the United States greenlit Israel's war on Iran during nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran, there is every reason for people in the region, certainly including Palestinians in Gaza, to believe that the U.S. is not a trustworthy party, and that these kinds of proposals are being made in bad faith. So there
I hear your
is
point.
really.
Yeah, and Mr. Kafiro, just very quickly, I also wanted to get your thoughts on this. Like when Netanyahu says that we will finish the job if Hamas does not agree to it, finish what? There is no Hamas leadership left. Whatever was left is in Qatar. They've apologized to Qatar at this point. So finish what? Finish Gaza, finish the Gazans, finish whatever rubble is left there, finish what?
Well, there continues to be armed resistance in Gaza, and I think Netanyahu is talking about going after the militants who are in Gaza right now. But I think also another point that is important to bring up here is that with Trump, optics and shifting the narrative are always important. I think this is sort of an attempt to make it seem like the United States and Israel are being totally reasonable. And in the event that Hamas refuses to accept this plan, then it's about really sort of shifting the narrative and making it seem like the U.S. and Israel bent over backwards to try to bring so-called peace to Gaza. And that didn't happen because of Hamas, and thus a continuation of the genocide is, according to this narrative, totally justified. So again, I think this is about really sort of also Trump dealing with domestic politics in the United. Okay.
And very quickly,
absolutely. And what would this mean for Netanyahu politically? We know that, we had some resistance before when it came to some plans. How do you assess Israelis or probably parliamentarians will be looking at this deal?
Well, what really matters is how the right-wing extremists in Netanyahu's cabinet are going to react. They are not going to be in favor of this plan. So I think there's a very good chance that what Netanyahu is going to try to do is convince them that this is just a temporary thing. This is just a means of getting the hostages back, getting Hamas to completely demilitarize, disarm. And then once those two goals are achieved, then Israel can relaunch the war on Gaza and proceed to annex it. I think he's going to try to convince these figures, such as Smotrich and Ben Gvir, that this is just about optics and rhetoric in a temporary context, because we know that they are not going to sign on to this peace proposal. Okay.
Giorgio, thanks so much for joining us. That was Giorgio Kafiro from Washington, D.C., sharing all your insights. Of course, there are 20 points. Whether Hamas agrees or not, that remains a question even now. We'll need to wait and watch what comes from the Hamas side. The ultimatum has already been shared with them. Thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
Shifting focus to the Russian side, Russian President Vladimir Putin has launched the biggest autumn conscription drive since 2016.
Now, of course, in the latest draft, Putin has ordered 135,000 men to volunteer for compulsory military service. And this is part of Russia's autumn conscription drive. Russia holds 2 conscription drives each year, spring and autumn. Under these drives, men aged 18 to 30 required to serve for 12 months. Typically, more men are drafted in the spring when students finish school or university. Earlier this year, the spring 2025 intake reached 160,000, the highest in more than a decade.
Now, the Kremlin says that this year's autumn draft is not related to the war in Ukraine. Officially, conscripts are supposed to remain at military bases inside Russia, but Kiev claims to have captured conscripts on the front line. And Putin himself admitted some were mistakenly sent into combat in 2022.
Beyond conscription, Russia has relied heavily on contract soldiers, lured by high salaries and large sign-up bonuses. Putin has ordered the military to expand to 1.5 million active personnel by 2026. Meanwhile, a new bill passed in the state Duma could see year-round conscription starting introduced as early as next year. Now, deep in the heart of Kenya, British soldiers are gearing up for a battle.
But of course, not in a real war, but in one of their biggest training exercises outside the UK. With over 1,000 troops taking part, these massive war games are among the few of their kind in the world. More in this next report. Take a look. The Canadian government has listed Bishnoi gang as a terrorist group under its criminal code. A terrorist listing means anything owned by this group in Canada is, of course.
Absolutely, of course. It includes property, vehicles, money, and can be frozen or seized. Now, it also means immigration officials can deny suspected gang members entry into Canada. A press release issued by the government said the acts of violence have no place in Canada, especially those that target specific communities to create a climate of fear and intimidation.
Now, the government noted that the group has presence in Canada and it is active in areas with significant diaspora communities. The notification further noted that the group engages in murder, shootings, arson and generates terror through extortion and intimidation. The notification, another step forward in repairing India-Canada ties after an all-out diplomatic war in the final months of Justin Trudeau's prime ministership, comes just a month after a Canadian MP, Frank Caputo, urged the country's public safety minister, Gary Anand Sangari, to slap the terrorist tag on this group.
Caputo, who is the shadow public safety minister, wrote to Anand Sangari to highlight Bishnoi's vast criminal empire, and it was guilty of assassination and the extortion of Canadian citizens and engaged in such illegal activities for political, religious and ideological reasons.
He also pointed out to appeals by 4 other Canadian politicians, including Patrick Brown, who is the mayor of Brampton, which is home to about 20% of Canada's entire Sikh population.
With Bishnoi gang's listing, there are now 88 terrorist entities listed under Canada's criminal code. The Bishnoi gang has been linked to various murders since the killing of Punjabi singer Sidhu Moosewala in May 2022. The list includes killing of Maharashtra politician Baba Siddiqui in October 2024, as well as firing outside the residence of Bollywood star Salman Khan in April 2025. Now, America bleeds through another weekend of carnage as 4 worshippers die in a Michigan church attack.
And 3 more were gunned down at a North Carolina waterfront bar. In just 30 days, over 300 people have been killed and more than 1,300 have been wounded across 300 separate shootings nationwide. We examine a nation where nowhere is safe anymore. Not churches, not bars, not schools. More in this next report. Take a look.
The death toll keeps climbing, and America cannot look away. Sunday morning worship turned into a massacre in Grand Blanc, Michigan. Thomas Jacob Sanford, a 40-year-old Iraq War veteran, rammed his truck through church doors before unleashing assault rifle fire on hundreds of worshippers. The church also set ablaze in the deadly attack.
The incident that we're going to talk about here today, as I said, was happening at 10:25 a.m. at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is located at 4285 McCandless Road. During this incident, what we know right now is that a 40-year-old suspect from Burton, he's a male, he drove his vehicle through the front doors of the church. He then exited his vehicle, firing several rounds at individuals within the church.
Again in North Carolina, another gunman pulled up to the American Fish Company waterfront bar and opened fire from his vessel. Patrons dove for cover as bullets tore through the crowd enjoying a regular Saturday night.
As officers arrived and were on the way, we got multiple reports of an active shooter, possibly coming from a boat that was out in the intercoastal waterway.
U.S. President Donald Trump says that the epidemic of violence must end. Across the U.S., the line between public safety and absolute chaos has vanished. The chilling truth is clear. In the United States, nowhere is safe. In the last 4 weeks alone, the data is shocking. Over 300 separate shootings have ripped through the country, leaving a trail of 300 dead and more than 1,300 people wounded. The data aggregates to 10 people dying every day. The sheer volume of violence is overwhelming the system, turning routine public spaces from schools to places of worship into active war zones. This is not a security crisis. It is a mass casualty event accelerating with terrifying speed. The constant thread connecting the bloodshed is the staggering saturation of firepower. American population of roughly 330 million owns an estimated 400 million guns. This unprecedented civilian arsenal of more guns than people in the country ensures that every argument, every moment of despair and every act of malice can instantly escalate to mass slaughter. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, it's time now for a very short break on World Day. We'll be back with more on the other side. We'll come and report about Nepalese authorities that have launched a formal investigation against two former prime ministers. This after Gen Z protesters set their homes on fire on September 9. We'll get you all the details on the other side.
Durga Puja celebrations are in full swing across India. As part of the festivities, devotees offered traditional feasts as offerings to Goddess Durga. We'll bring you all the details on that front. Slipping into a short break now. So come right back. This is World DNA.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with Jyotsna. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines.
Beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu say they have agreed on a new peace plan for Gaza. Plan proposes an immediate end to military operations, with Hamas releasing all hostages within 72 hours in exchange for hundreds of detained Gazans.
Donald Trump says his plan calls for a new Board of Peace temporarily supervising Gaza's governance, and the body will be headed by Donald Trump and include world leaders, with former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair named as a member.
Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu claims Trump peace plan will allow IDF to remain in Gaza, rules out Palestinian statehood, in a statement issued hours after his meeting with President Trump at the White House.
I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing. I hope they change their mind, but we're going to...
US Vice President J.D. Vance says that the federal government was headed to a shutdown after top Republican and Democratic congressional leaders left a White House meeting with President Trump without a budget deal.
Russia warns of steep escalation risk if U.S. sends Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, a day after U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said that Washington was considering a Ukrainian request to obtain the cruise missiles.
Internet watchdog says Afghanistan is currently experiencing a total connectivity blackout after Taliban government shuts down telecommunications. This comes weeks after they began severing fiber optic internet connections to prevent what they call immorality.
YouTube has agreed to pay President Donald Trump $22 million to settle a 2021 lawsuit, which he filed after the company suspended his account following the January 6th U.S. Capitol riot.
Gold prices surged to a new high on Tuesday, heading for their strongest monthly gain in 14 years, driven by U.S. government shutdown fears and rising expectations of more interest rate cuts, boosting demand for the safe haven asset.
Nepal stunned two-time world champions West Indies by a record 90 runs and win their T20I series 2-0 with a match to spare. And this is Nepal's first ever bilateral series win against a test-playing nation.
Devotees flock to temples and pavilions across India to worship goddess Durga as the nation celebrates Maha Ashtami on the 8th day of the Navratri festival. Nepali authorities have launched a formal investigation against two former prime ministers.
That is Shea Bahadur Dioba and Pushpa Kamal Dahel, also known as Prachanda, along with ex-minister Deepak Kharka. The investigation comes after Gen Z protesters set their homes on fire on September 9th. Video circulated online showed protesters entering their homes, vandalizing and burning thousands of notes with denominations of rupees 5,000 and 1,000. This prompted the Department of Money Laundering investigation to collect evidence from their residences and send the samples to the National Forensic Science Laboratory for analysis.
Deoba's office has denied the allegations, claiming the videos showing burnt banknotes at his residence were artificially generated with malicious intent to tarnish his reputation and part of a deliberate misinformation campaign. Now, both former Prime Ministers Sher Bahadur Deoba and Pushpa Kamil Dahal have held power in various capacities for nearly 2 decades in Nepal, with media reports alleging that they accumulated wealth illegally during their tenures.
Now, according to authorities, the investigation aims to determine the authenticity of the banknotes and source of funds, potentially leading to further action against the former premiers and ex-minister if confirmed. The mountains are calling 6 months after the deadly Pahalgam terror attack.
And a resilient return is now what is being seen. Jammu and Kashmir is pulling back the curtain on its breathtaking beauty with 12 more jewels in its crown, now accessible to the world. WION's Idris Lone reports from Srinagar.
The silence has lifted after a painful pause. The echoes of nature not fair resound. Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha's announcement is more than a policy shift. It's a powerful statement of resilience and return. With 16 destinations already thriving, the addition of 12 more from the misty slopes of Aru Valley to the historic Sentry of Command Post swells the total open to 28. This isn't just a recovery, it's an acceleration. Local stakeholders, once gripped by uncertainty, now breathe a collective sigh of relief and optimism. Their registers are ready.
I will highly appreciate the decision taken by the Honorable LG of reopening the destinations, because you see people were thinking that is it safe to go to Kashmir or not? Why are the destinations closed? Is there any problem? Is there any threat of terrorism? This is the wisely decision taken by the Honorable LG, and that too in a Puja holidays, upcoming season, followed by winter destinations.
Autumn is breaking, painting the chinar trees in hues of fire and gold. This season, they predict, will be the turning point. Tourists eager to share the visual feast are already excited.
I'm very happy. That's amazing. I'll get to see all the places. It's good. It has been very safe. Everything is safe. The security has been taken care of. So it's great to visit Kashmir anytime now.
Kashmir was the only place left to be visited. And when I came here, it felt like home. Not only the safety and security. I think the thing they call Kashmir, the hospitality. I used to read it and I used to think that might be overrated, right? But when I came here, I think only when you come here, only you can feel that Kashmir. The food, the hospitality, the people, the places, everything, I think is very difficult to express here.
The administration's careful balance between security and accessibility offers reassurance to the visitors after months of disruption. The reopening signals not just a step towards normalcy, but a strategic push to revive Jammu and Kashmir's vital tourism economy, supporting livelihoods and showcasing the region's year-round appeal.
First, 16 such tourist destinations were reopened earlier, and now 12 more have been reopened by the government of Jammu and Kashmir. Around 20 places still remain closed across Jammu and Kashmir. Meanwhile, the tourist stakeholders have welcomed this step and have also appealed to the government of Jammu and Kashmir that all the tourist destinations should be thrown open before the winter season. With video journalist Firoz, Idris Lone for WION World is One.
Well, Durga Puja, which has now become a festival, and it was meant to be for devotion, but it has now become more or as much for food as well.
Absolutely, and during this festival, devotees offer a variety of bhog prasad as offering to the goddess. The traditional feast or bhog is believed to be defined by 3 different faith systems. In our next report, WION's correspondent Anushree Bhomik explores the origins, significance, and the relevance of Durga Puja bhog. Take a look.
It's that time of the year when fields are dotted with pristine white kash flowers or wild sugarcane. It's also a season when the scent of shioli, the night-flowering jasmine, wafts through the air, signifying the arrival of goddess Durga. It's a time for celebrations and community gatherings. It is Durga Puja 2025. What unfolds over the next few days is nothing short of a spectacle. This year, the festival has begun on the 28th of September and will culminate with Vijayadashmi on the 2nd of October. Vijayadashmi or Dussehra celebrates the victory of goddess Durga over the demon Mahishasur, symbolizing the triumph of good over evil. During these 4 to 5 days, devotees offer a variety of bhog prasad as puja offerings. So what does the traditional Durga Puja bhog consist of? Are there different kinds of bhog offerings? We spoke with food historian Preeta Sen to understand all about Durga Puja bhog, its origin and its essence.
Bengal being completely, it's the most fertile part of India. It's extremely lush and produce was in abundance, and therefore whatever was the seasonal produce then, the first of it was offered to the goddess. So what was bhog? It was a thanksgiving for the entire sustenance that the universe was bestowing on the people.
One of the most popular origin stories of Durga Puja is set in the aftermath of the Battle of Plassey in 1757. By defeating Nawab Siraj-ud-Dawla, the last independent Nawab of Bengal, Robert Clive, the British military officer, cemented the East India Company's hold over Bengal. Clive wanted to hold a grand ceremony in Calcutta to convey his gratitude towards the Almighty. It is then that Nabakishan Deb, Clive's close confidant, invited the Englishman to his mansion to make offerings to goddess Durga. That's how Durga Puja is known to have emerged in Bengal. And the traditional Durga Puja bhog offering is believed to be steered by the 3 schools of rituals in the worship of the goddess.
There are 3 schools of bhog cooking. One is the Vaishnav tradition, where it is pure vegetarian, and by pure vegetarian I mean sattvic, with no onion or garlic, and that is what is generally seen out in the community pujas, because it has to be inclusive. The next one is the Shakta tradition, the worship of the goddess as pure Shakti, pure energy, the feminine energy, the primordial energy. So there you have Durga with her 10 arms, you have Jagodhatri, you have Kali. Durga and Kali, they are fond of colocasia stalks, kochushak. It's a seasonal thing. Annapurna being the eternal mother, the nurturer, is only greens and rice. Lakshmi being the lady of wealth is treated as the elite among all of them and given fish and hilsa. The third tradition is the tantric tradition, the worship of the dark goddess, of Chamunda, of Chundi, of Kali. So here the traditions are quite extreme. Raw meat is offered to the goddess, and alcohol. After the goddess's bhog has been done, that is taken and little bits of it is added to the community bhog of the big vessels. That is when it becomes bhog. It's called the mool bhog. Otherwise, it's plain khichdi and sabzi and whatever. And that is what we take, and we do this and we take our first mouthful. Why do we do this? Because it has now become prasad.
So the khichdi bhog that we find today in the pandals originated from the Vaishnav tradition. From the simple household celebrations, it stepped out into the public domain in the form of community pujas. A common khichdi platter has khichdi, a mixed veg dish called labra, fried brinjal called beguni, tomato chutney, tomatoes stewed in sugar syrup, and payesh or thickened milk cooked with rice, raisins and sugar. This is an inclusive bhog, acceptable by one and all.
It is a sunny September afternoon and the crowd at this pandal closer to east of Delhi is growing by the minute. And here I am, all set to join the queue to relish my platter of bhoged khichdi. While this meal is something that can be easily prepared at home, its taste can never quite match the one offered at pujo pandals. Because bhoged khichdi is special. It has Ma Durga's divine touch that draws millions and millions of devotees to pujo pandals year after year.
A looming U.S. government shutdown could deal a major blow to the release of key economic data.
And that includes the September jobs report and trade figures, just as markets and policymakers are closely watching every sign of how the economy is performing. With government funding set to expire at midnight Tuesday, unless Congress reaches a deal, the U.S. Labor and Commerce Departments warned that many statistical operations would be suspended. Among the casualties, the September employment report, construction spending data, and international trade figures. Now, the Bureau of Labour Statistics, that is the BLS, is a key agency facing suspension. The Commerce Department's Census Bureau and its Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA, would also cease most services.
The jobs report is normally scheduled for Friday. The Census Bureau had planned to publish August construction spending data this Wednesday and manufacturers' shipments, inventories, and orders on Thursday. The August international goods and services trade figures are due October 7th. If the shutdown lasts, those too could be delayed. More broadly, the BEA's first estimate of third quarter GDP due October 30th could be impacted if inputs from the Census Bureau are missing.
Now, the employment report is crucial. The Federal Reserve, businesses and households use it to gauge labour market strength and inflation pressures. If the Consumer Price Index (CPI) report is delayed, that could affect the Social Security Administration's cost of living adjustment. Many retirees plan their budgets on that. And BLS itself warned that a reduction in quality of data collected might impact the quality of future estimates. Now, the agency has also seen weakening response rates and has suspended data collection in parts of the CPI in some regions.
Congress's failure to agree on a temporary spending deal would trigger the shutdown. The agencies say that once funding is restored, normal operations would resume, and they'll notify the public of any shifts in the release schedule. It is uncertain whether weekly jobless claims would continue, although states collect the raw data. The BLS does seasonal adjustments, which may be disrupted. Longer shutdowns raise deeper concerns about the integrity and continuity of U.S. economic data, historically considered among the most reliable globally.
Markets mostly shrugged off U.S. shutdown fears on Monday, with Wall Street edging higher. Gold prices surged to a new high on Tuesday, heading for their strongest monthly gain in 14 years. Oil prices fell on Tuesday as another anticipated production increase by OPEC Plus, while the dollar slipped. And in cricket, Nepal stunned two-time world champions West Indies by 90 runs in the second T20I to win the series 2-1.
And this is the first ever bilateral series win against a test-playing nation. Nepal won the toss and chose to bat first. They posted a solid total of 173 for 6 in their 20 overs at the Sharjah Cricket Stadium. A 100-run partnership for the fourth wicket between Asif Sheikh and Sandeep Jora, who hit 5 sixes, helped Nepal reach that score. West Indies, who are 6th in the T20 rankings, struggled from the start of their chase. They were 63 for 4 in the 12th over and were eventually bowled out for just 83. Only 3 batters reached double figures, and this is the lowest total ever by a full member nation against an associate team.
The 90-run margin is also the biggest win for an associate side over a full member in T20 internationals. The defeat comes after West Indies' test team was bowled out for 27 by Australia in July, which is the second lowest score in test history and the worst since 1955. Nepal, coached by Australian Stuart Law, will take part in the 2026 T20 World Cup qualifiers next month.
Now, Hollywood actors Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter have reunited for Waiting for Godot.
And here's all that happened as Bill and Ted landed on Broadway. Take a look.
Then going into acting school, training, read plays and would just give you the Broadway cast. And I was trying to be an actor and studying, and that became a destination. And then when I was a teen, I came and saw shows like Bent and Torch Song Trilogy, Agnes of God. And it was like, wow, I want to do that.
I grew up largely here. I was doing Broadway as a kid. Did a couple of long-running shows back-to-back, so I spent a lot of years in these theaters. And it's amazing to be back this way and with Keanu and with Jamie and the cast. This incredible cast.
And with that, we call a wrap to this bulletin. But don't go anywhere. News and updates only on the other side. And before we wrap up, here is a look at all the climate stories making headlines across the world. You're watching Beyond World is Fun. Stay tuned.